Ambassador Virelketh of the Scythani hegemony walked through the grand halls of Station Nexus 7 with her scales shimmering under the artificial lights. This was her first time attending the Galactic Concordat Summit. She had trained for years to reach this position. She had studied every species, memorized every protocol, and learned every rule of diplomatic conduct. She believed she was ready for anything. She was wrong. The summit brought together hundreds of species from across the galaxy. Each delegation arrived with great ceremony. The Krethvar came first. They were tall, insect-like creatures with hard shells and 4 arms. Their guards carried plasma lances that glowed with deadly blue energy. The weapons hummed with power that could melt through starship armor. Next came the Ulithians. They were soft-bodied creatures that floated in anti-gravity chairs. Their guards held neural disruptors. These weapons could shut down any nervous system with a single pulse. One shot meant instant death for most species. The Gorvani delegation made the floor shake when they arrived. These massive creatures stood 3 meters tall and were built like living mountains. Their guards carried graviton hammers. Each hammer weighed more than Virelketh herself. A single swing could crush a ground vehicle into scrap metal. Every species brought weapons. Every species brought armor. Every species showed their strength through their guards. This was normal. This was expected. This was how things worked in the galaxy. Then the humans arrived. Virelketh watched them walk through the main entrance. There were 6 of them. 2 were diplomats in formal clothing. 4 were guards in simple uniforms. The uniforms were dark blue with minimal decoration. The material looked like ordinary cloth. There was no armor. There were no energy shields. There were no weapons of any kind. Virelketh blinked her secondary eyelids in confusion. She looked again, thinking she must have missed something. But no, the human guards carried nothing. Their hands were empty. Their belts held only communication devices. They wore soft boots that made almost no sound on the metal floor. She turned to her senior aide, an old Sithani named Koreth, who had served in diplomacy for over 200 cycles. His scales had faded to pale gray with age, but his mind remained sharp. "Koreth," she whispered, "why are the human guards unarmed? Is this some kind of insult to the summit? Are they showing disrespect?" Koreth's reaction surprised her. His scales shifted to a darker shade. This was a sign of deep unease in their species. He did not answer immediately. Instead, he looked around as if checking whether anyone was listening. "We do not speak of such things here, Ambassador," he said quietly. "Please continue with your duties." This only made Virelketh more curious. She watched the human delegation move through the crowd. Something strange was happening. The other species were reacting to the humans in unexpected ways. The Krethvar ambassador was a warrior caste veteran. He had fought in 3 wars. His shell bore the scars of countless battles. He feared nothing, yet when the humans walked past, he stepped aside. He gave them more space than necessary. His antenna pressed flat against his head in what Virelketh recognized as a submissive gesture. The Ulithians adjusted their floating chairs to create distance from the human guards. Their color patterns shifted to anxious yellows and greens. Even the mighty Gorvani, who towered over everyone and feared no physical threat, seemed uncomfortable. Their small eyes tracked the human guards constantly. They kept their massive hands close to their weapons. Virelketh could not understand this. The humans were among the smallest species at the summit. They had no natural weapons, no claws, no fangs, no venom, no shells or thick hide. They were soft and fragile-looking. Their guards could not possibly pose a threat to any of these mighty warriors, yet everyone avoided them. During the opening ceremony, Virelketh found herself standing near the Mintharan delegation. The Mintharans were known as scholars and scientists. They studied everything. Surely they would have answers. "Excuse me," she said to a Mintharan diplomat. "I am new to these gatherings. Can you explain something to me?" The Mintharan turned its bulbous head toward her. "Of course, Ambassador. How may I help?" "The humans," Virelketh said. "Why do their guards carry no weapons? And why does everyone seem nervous around them?" The Mintharan's skin turned pale. Its many eyes blinked in a rapid pattern that suggested fear. "I am sorry, Ambassador. I cannot discuss this. You should speak with someone who has proper clearance." It turned away quickly and hurried into the crowd. Virelketh stood alone, more confused than ever. The summit continued for several hours. There were speeches and ceremonies and formal introductions. Through it all, Virelketh kept watching the humans. She noticed more strange details. The human guards never seemed to rest. They stood perfectly still when their diplomats were speaking, but their eyes never stopped moving. They watched everything. They tracked every movement in the room. When someone approached their delegation too quickly, the guards would shift their weight slightly, just a small movement. But it felt like something coiling, preparing to strike. One of the guards was a female human called Morrison. Virelketh heard her name during introductions. Morrison was not large. She was smaller than most of the other human guards. Her hair was cut short and her face showed no emotion. But when Virelketh accidentally made eye contact with her, something cold ran down her spine. Those eyes were wrong. They faced forward like a predator's eyes. They were calm and steady and completely without fear. In that brief moment, Virelketh felt like prey. She felt like something being measured and evaluated. She felt like something that had been found lacking. She looked away quickly. That night, in her private quarters, Virelketh called Korith to her. The old Sithani arrived with obvious reluctance. "I need answers," Virelketh said firmly. "Something is wrong here. Everyone fears the humans, but no one will explain why. As ambassador, I need to understand." Korith was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. "You are young, ambassador. You were not yet hatched during the Kethra incident. There is a reason the galactic archives on that event are sealed at the highest classification. There is a reason we do not speak of it openly." "What reason?" Virelketh demanded. Korith moved closer. His old eyes met hers. "Because some truths, once known, cannot be forgotten. And this truth changes how you see the galaxy. It changes how you see everything. I am not afraid of truth." "You should be," Korith said. "You asked why the humans carry no weapons. The answer is not that they are weak. The answer is not that they are peaceful. The answer is something far worse." He paused. "They are not allowed to carry weapons, ambassador. The Galactic Concordat itself forbids it. Not to insult them, not to limit their power, but to protect everyone else." Virelketh felt her scales shift with confusion. "That makes no sense. Protect us from what? They are soft creatures with no natural defenses." Koreth shook his head slowly. "That is what the Kethra thought. 17 of their best commandos, fully armed, military-grade equipment. They attacked a human delegation of 4. The battle lasted 94 seconds. His voice dropped even lower. There were no human casualties. There were no Kethra survivors. He turned and walked toward the door. Before leaving, he looked back one last time. "Sleep well, ambassador, and remember my warning. Some truths have teeth. This one has claws you cannot imagine." He left Virelketh alone with her questions and a growing sense of fear that she could not explain. Outside her window, Station Nexus 7 floated peacefully among the stars. Somewhere on this station, 4 unarmed humans stood guard over their diplomats, and everyone was afraid of them. Virelketh did not sleep well that night. Virelketh could not forget what Korith had told her. 94 seconds. 17 armed soldiers against 4 unarmed humans. No human casualties. No survivors among the attackers. The numbers made no sense. The story seemed impossible. Yet Korith was not a liar. He had no reason to make up such a tale. She needed to know more. The next morning, Virelketh began her investigation. She started with the public archives of Station Nexus 7. The archives contained millions of records about every species in the Galactic Concordat. Surely there would be information about humanity. She found the basic entry quickly. Humanity had been contacted approximately 400 cycles ago. In galactic terms, this was almost nothing. Some species had been members of the Concordat for 10,000 cycles or more. Humans were newcomers. Babies. Really. Compared to the ancient civilizations of the galaxy, their homeworld was called Earth. The file classified it as a Class 1-2 Death World. Virelketh paused at this. She knew the Death World classification system. Class 1 was mildly dangerous. Class 5 was considered survivable only with advanced technology. Class 1-0 was the threshold for extreme hazard. Anything above Class 1-0 was usually marked as uninhabitable. Earth was Class 1-2. She read further. The planet had extreme temperature variations. Some regions were frozen solid. Others were burning deserts. The weather systems included massive storms, floods, earthquakes, and volcanic eruptions. The atmosphere contained a highly reactive gas called oxygen that could cause fires and chemical burns. The wildlife was worse. Earth had predators with massive teeth and claws. It had venomous creatures whose poison could kill in minutes. It had parasites that lived inside other creatures. It had plants that were toxic, plants that had thorns, and plants that could trap and dissolve living things. Even the smallest creatures were dangerous. Tiny insects carried diseases that had killed millions of humans throughout their history. The water contained invisible organisms that could destroy a body from the inside. Yet humans had survived. They had not just survived. They had conquered their entire planet. They had risen to the top of the food chain despite having no natural weapons, no claws, no fangs, no armor, no venom. They were soft and slow compared to the predators around them. But somehow, they had won. Viralketh found this fascinating but not terrifying. Many species came from harsh worlds. The Krethvar homeworld was a volcanic nightmare. The Gorvani came from a high-gravity planet that crushed most life forms. Surviving a difficult world did not make a species into something that the entire galaxy feared. She needed more specific information. She needed details about the Kethra incident. The main archives had nothing. The event was mentioned only as a reference number with a note that said, "Access restricted, Concordat Security Level 7. Viralketh did not have Level 7 clearance. Few diplomats did. She would need to find another way. Over the next 2 days, Viralketh made careful inquiries. She spoke with other diplomats. Most refused to discuss humanity at all. Some pretended not to understand her questions. A few warned her to stop asking. But eventually, she found someone who could help. His name was Grithan. He was a junior archivist from the Nelathi species. The Nelathi were known for their love of information and their willingness to trade secrets. Grithan was young and ambitious. More importantly, he was greedy. They met in a quiet section of the station. Viralketh offered him a substantial bribe in the form of rare minerals from her homeworld. Grithan's tentacles writhed with interest. "The Kethra incident," she said. "I need whatever you can find." Grithan was nervous. "That file is sealed. If anyone discovers that I accessed it, no one will discover anything," Viralketh assured him. "I am a Scythony ambassador. My species has no alliance with humanity and no reason to share this information with them. I am simply curious." Grithan hesitated for a long moment. Then his greed won over his fear. He agreed to help. 3 hours later, he delivered a data chip to her quarters. His tentacles were shaking as he handed it over. "This is everything I could copy without triggering security alerts," he said. "It is not complete. Many sections are still redacted, but it is more than anyone outside Level 7 has ever seen." Viralketh thanked him and sent him away. Then she locked her door and began to read. The report was fragmented. Many parts were blacked out or missing entirely. But what remained was enough to make her scales turn cold. The Kethra were a minor species known for piracy and extortion. 23 cycles ago, they had devised a plan to gain leverage over the Terran Alliance, as humanity's government was called. They would take human diplomats hostage and demand trade concessions in exchange for their safe return. The attack was well planned. 17 Kethra commandos, all veterans, all equipped with military-grade weapons and armor. They struck during a diplomatic meeting on a neutral station. Their target was Ambassador Chen and her small delegation. The human delegation consisted of 4 people: Ambassador Chen herself, 2 aides, and only 1 security guard, a human male named Torres, 1 guard, 1 unarmed guard against 17 armed soldiers. Viralketh read the timeline carefully. The Kethra had entered the meeting room at 14 hours 32 minutes and 7 seconds station time. They had announced their demands at 14 hours 32 minutes and 15 seconds, 8 seconds. At 14 hours 32 minutes and 19 seconds, Guard Torres had moved. The report described what happened next in cold, clinical language. Torres had crossed the room in approximately 2 seconds. He had engaged the first Kethra commando before any of them could fire their weapons. The method of engagement was listed as close quarters combat using bare hands and improvised weapons. Improvised weapons. Viralketh read that phrase twice. The human had no actual weapons. He had used whatever was available in the room. Furniture, broken equipment, and according to one horrifying line that was only partially redacted, he had used the Kethra themselves. The fight lasted 94 seconds. When it ended, all 17 Kethra were neutralized. 12 were dead from blunt force trauma. Their bodies had been broken by impacts that the report compared to industrial accidents. 3 were dead from cervical fractures. Their necks had been twisted until they snapped. 2 had been suffocated. The method was redacted. But Viral Keth could imagine possibilities that made her feel sick. 1 human, unarmed, against 17 armored soldiers, and he had won. The report included medical analysis of the guard afterward. He had minor injuries, bruises on his hands, a small cut on his arm. His heart rate was recorded at only slightly above normal. His stress hormones were elevated but within acceptable ranges for physical exertion. He had killed 17 beings in less than 2 minutes, and his body treated it like moderate exercise. There was a note at the bottom of the report. It was from an intelligence analyst. Recommend immediate upgrade of humanity threat classification. Previous assessment of low combat capability was catastrophically wrong. Evidence suggests humans may be the most dangerous species in the known galaxy when engaged in direct physical confrontation. Recommend prohibition on human security personnel carrying weapons at diplomatic functions. Armed humans would represent an unacceptable escalation risk. Unarmed humans are already sufficient to neutralize any conventional threat. Advise all Concordat species to avoid provoking human protective instincts. Viral Keth put down the data chip. Her hands were shaking. Her mind was struggling to accept what she had read. 1 human, unarmed, against 17, and they were worried about what would happen if humans carried weapons. She looked out her window at the station around her. Somewhere out there, 4 human guards stood watch over their diplomats. 4 guards who were, according to this report, each capable of killing a small army with their bare hands. And everyone in the galaxy knew it except her. Viral Keth understood now why Korath had warned her. Some truths did have teeth. This truth had teeth, claws, and the strength to use them. She had wanted knowledge, and now she had it. She was not sure she could sleep again, but she was also not satisfied. She had learned what humans could do. She had not yet learned how they could do it. What made these soft, small, clawless creatures into such perfect killing machines? She needed to find someone who could explain human biology. She needed a scientist, and she knew exactly who to ask. Tomorrow, she would request a meeting with Dr. Thesson, the Concordat's leading xenobiologist. He had studied humanity for decades. If anyone could explain this impossible species, it was him. Viral Keth locked the data chip in her secure safe and tried to rest. But every time she closed her eyes, she saw the image of a single human standing in a room full of bodies, and he had not even been breathing hard. Dr. Thesson's laboratory was located in the science wing of Station Nexus 7. The Mintheron scientist had worked there for over 60 cycles, studying the biology of every species in the Concordat. His research was legendary. His knowledge was unmatched. When Viral Keth requested a meeting to discuss human biology, he agreed immediately. She found him waiting in his office. Dr. Thesson was old, even by Mintheron standards. His body was supported by a mechanical frame that helped him move. His skin hung loose and wrinkled, but his many eyes were still sharp, and they focused on Viral Keth with obvious interest. Ambassador Viral Keth, he said in a wet, bubbling voice. I have been expecting you. Word travels fast on this station. I heard you have been asking questions about humanity. Viral Keth did not bother to deny it. I need to understand them, Doctor. I have seen things that do not make sense. I have read reports that seem impossible. How can a species with no natural weapons be the most dangerous thing in the galaxy? Dr. Thesson made a sound that might have been laughter. Ah. The eternal question. Please, sit down. This explanation will take some time. Viral Keth sat in a chair designed for multiple species. Dr. Thesson activated a holographic display that filled the room with images and data. Let us begin with a simple question, he said. What do you know about how humans hunt? Viral Keth thought about it. They are tool users. They make weapons, spears, guns, that sort of thing. Yes, but that is not how they evolved to hunt. Before tools, before weapons, humans hunted using a method called persistence predation. Dr. Thesson pulled up an image of ancient humans chasing an animal across a grassy plain. They would chase their prey, not catch it, just chase it. For hours, for days if necessary. Viral Keth did not understand. But they are slow. Many animals can outrun them. In a sprint. Yes. But humans do not sprint. They jog. They walk. They never stop. They follow their prey across any terrain, through any weather, for as long as it takes. Dr. Thesson's eyes gleamed. The prey runs fast and then stops to rest. The humans keep coming. The prey runs again. But slower this time. The humans keep coming. Eventually, the prey cannot run anymore. It collapses from exhaustion, and the humans are still walking toward it. The image changed to show a graph of endurance capabilities across species. Humans were at the very top. Most species cannot regulate their body temperature during extended activity. Dr. Thesson explained. They overheat. They must stop. Humans sweat. This cooling system allows them to remain active far longer than any other known land predator. In terms of pure endurance, Ambassador, humans are unmatched in the galaxy. Virelketh felt a chill run through her scales. They can chase something until it dies of exhaustion? Not just can. Did. For hundreds of thousands of years. This is how they survived on their death world. This is how they became the dominant species on a planet that tried to kill them every day. Dr. Thesson moved to the next section of his presentation. Now let us discuss what happens when a human is threatened. Their bodies have a response system that we call the adrenaline surge. A diagram of human internal organs appeared. One small gland was highlighted. When a human perceives danger, this gland releases powerful chemicals into their blood. The effects are remarkable. Dr. Thesson began listing them. Strength increases by 40 to 60%. Pain reception is suppressed, sometimes completely blocked. Heart rate accelerates. Reaction time improves dramatically. Blood flow concentrates in the muscles and brain. Digestion stops. All energy is redirected to combat. He paused to let this sink in. In this state, humans have been documented lifting objects that should be far too heavy for them. They have continued fighting with injuries that would incapacitate any other species. Broken bones, torn muscles, severe blood loss. They simply ignore it until the threat is neutralized. Virelketh remembered the report on the Kethra incident. The guard Torres had suffered only minor injuries, but she now realized those injuries might have been worse than reported. He simply had not noticed them. It gets worse, Doctor. Thesson continued. These injuries that they ignore during combat, they heal from them. Human bodies have remarkable regeneration capabilities. Broken bones mend in weeks. Cuts and wounds close and repair themselves. Humans can lose significant amounts of blood and survive. They can recover from damage that would be permanent for most species. The display changed again, showing data about human physical capabilities. A human fist strikes with approximately 700 to 900 newtons of force. This is enough to crack bone and rupture organs in most galactic species. Trained fighters can exceed 5,000 newtons. Their kicks are even more powerful. Dr. Thesson highlighted several anatomical points. Human bones are dense and heavy. Their skull is essentially a natural helmet. Their elbows and knees can be used as weapons. Their fingers can crush, tear, and gouge. He showed an image of human teeth. Their bite force is 890 newtons, sufficient to sever digits on most species, and they have very efficient jaws that allow them to bite repeatedly with minimal fatigue. Virelketh was starting to feel sick. She had thought of humans as soft and harmless. Now she was seeing them as something else entirely. There is more, Dr. Thesson said. Humans have forward-facing eyes. Do you know what this means in evolutionary terms? They are predators. Virelketh whispered. Exactly. Prey animals have eyes on the sides of their heads to watch for threats. Predators have forward-facing eyes for depth perception and tracking. Humans see the way hunters see. Their brains are wired for pursuit and combat. The doctor brought up toxicology data next. Humans regularly consume substances that would kill most galactic species. Capsaicin, a chemical that causes intense pain in most nervous systems. They put on their food for flavor. Caffeine, a stimulant that causes cardiac failure in many species. They drink every morning. Ethanol, a poisonous solvent. They consume recreationally and call it alcohol. Their bodies have adapted to process toxins that would kill you or me. Dr. Thesson turned off the display and faced Virelketh directly. But perhaps the most dangerous aspect of humanity is not physical at all. It is psychological. He moved closer to her. Humans form intense emotional bonds. They call this pack bonding. They can bond with almost anything. Other humans, of course. But also animals, machines, even ideas. Once a human has bonded with something, they will protect it with their lives. That does not sound dangerous, Viralketh said. Many species form social bonds. You do not understand. Human protective instincts override their survival instincts. A human who has bonded with you will place your safety above their own without hesitation. They will fight impossible odds. They will ignore pain and injury. They will not stop until you are safe or they are dead. Dr. Thassan's voice grew grave. And if you harm something a human has bonded with, they will not just fight you. They will hunt you. Remember, Ambassador, they are persistence predators. They will follow you across the galaxy if necessary. They do not forget. They do not forgive. And they do not stop. He sat back in his mechanical frame with a heavy sigh. You asked why humans arrive unarmed at diplomatic functions. Now you understand. The Galactic Concordat does not allow them to carry weapons, not to insult them, not to restrict them, but to protect everyone else from what might happen if they did. Viralketh stared at him. What would happen? Armed humans are exponentially more dangerous than unarmed humans. Their tool-using abilities are exceptional. Give them a blade and they become unstoppable. Give them a firearm and they become an army. Give them access to heavy weapons and they become a natural disaster. Dr. Thassan shook his head slowly. We tried to calculate what a single platoon of fully equipped human soldiers could do against standard Concordat military forces. The simulation results were so disturbing that they were classified and the program was discontinued. He looked at her with something like pity. My dear Ambassador, you came here hoping I would explain that humanity is not as dangerous as you feared. I am sorry. The truth is that they are more dangerous than you can possibly imagine. They are apex predators from a death world, shaped by millions of years of evolution to be the perfect survival machines. Viralketh stood on unsteady legs. Then why are they not conquering the galaxy? Why are they not taking what they want? Dr. Thassan tilted his head. Because they do not want to conquer. They want to belong. Remember the pack bonding I mentioned? Humans crave connection. They want friends, family, community. They would rather adopt the galaxy than dominate it. He made that wet laughing sound again. This is what makes them truly terrifying, Ambassador. They are the deadliest species in known space, and they desperately want to be your friend. The wise species accepts that friendship. The foolish species finds out what happens when humans feel betrayed. Viralketh left the laboratory in a daze. Everything she thought she knew about the galaxy had been wrong. The small, soft, clawless humans were not weak. They were the most dangerous things she had ever encountered. And she was about to see them in action. She just did not know it yet. The attack came 3 days after Viralketh's meeting with Dr. Thassan. It happened during a diplomatic reception in the main hall of Station Nexus 7. Hundreds of delegates from dozens of species had gathered for a formal dinner. The room was beautiful, with high ceilings and massive windows that showed the stars beyond. Tables were arranged in circles, each one surrounded by diplomats and their guards. Viralketh was seated near the center of the room. She had a good view of the human delegation. Ambassador Chen sat calmly, talking with a Gorvani diplomat about trade agreements. Her 4 guards stood at relaxed attention behind her. They looked almost bored. Viralketh could not stop watching them. She knew what they were now. She knew what they could do. And somehow, that made them more terrifying. They looked so ordinary, so harmless, like soft creatures who posed no threat to anyone. The lie was perfect. The first sign of trouble was a strange sound from the main entrance. A heavy thump, followed by shouting. The conversations in the hall began to quiet as delegates turned to look. Then the doors exploded inward. 15 figures rushed into the room. They were Zealoth, a reptilian species known for their military culture and ancient grudges. They wore black combat armor and carried pulse weapons that crackled with energy. Their leader stepped forward and raised his weapon above his head. "No one moves," he screamed. "The Gorvani delegation will pay for their crimes against our ancestors. We are the Zealoth Purity Movement, and we will have justice." Chaos erupted. Delegates screamed and tried to run. Guards from various species drew their weapons. Pulse fire began to flash across the room as the Zealoth attackers started shooting. Viralketh dove under her table. Her hearts were pounding with terror. She could hear the sounds of combat all around her. Energy weapons humming, bodies falling, people screaming. And then she saw the humans move. It was like nothing she had ever witnessed. One moment, the 4 human guards were standing behind Ambassador Chen. The next moment, they were gone. moving so fast that her eyes could barely track them. They did not run away from the danger. They ran toward it. Sergeant Morrison was in the lead. She crossed the distance to the nearest Zalith attacker in the time it took Viral Keth to take a single breath. The attacker saw her coming and tried to aim his weapon. He was too slow. Morrison did not stop when she reached him. She went through him like a natural disaster. Her body twisted in a way that seemed impossible, redirecting his weapon so that it fired into another attacker. At the same time, her other hand struck his throat with a sound like breaking wood. He collapsed, but Morrison was already moving to the next target. The other human guards were just as devastating. One of them, a large male, grabbed a Zealith by the arm and used his body as a shield against incoming pulse fire. The Zealith screamed as his own allies shot him repeatedly. The human then threw the body into two other attackers, knocking them down. He followed with movements too fast to see, and when he rose, 3 more Zealith were motionless on the ground. Another guard, a smaller female, had armed herself with a metal serving tray from one of the tables. In her hands, it became a weapon of terrible efficiency. She used it to block pulse shots, to strike with crushing force, to throw with deadly accuracy. One Zealith had his weapon knocked away by the flying tray. Before he could react, the human was on him, and then he was not moving anymore. The 4th guard fought with nothing but his bare hands. He moved between attackers like water flowing through rocks. Each movement was a strike. Each strike was precise. Joints bent in directions they were not meant to go. Bones made sounds that Viral Keth would hear in her nightmares for years. The whole fight lasted less than 30 seconds. Viral Keth watched from under her table, unable to look away. She remembered what Dr. Thesson had told her about human speed, strength, and combat efficiency, but hearing about it was nothing compared to seeing it. The humans did not fight like soldiers. They fought like force of nature, like evolutionary perfection, like creatures designed by millions of years of death to be the ultimate predators. When it was over, all 15 Zealith attackers were down. 12 were clearly dead. Their bodies showed the kind of damage that Viral Keth had read about in the Kethra incident report. Blunt force trauma, broken bones, twisted necks. 3 were unconscious and would need extensive medical care if they survived at all. The human guards gathered near their ambassador. They checked each other for injuries with quick, efficient movements. One had a small cut on his cheek. Another was favoring her left leg slightly. These were their only visible wounds. They were not even breathing hard. Ambassador Chen rose from her seat. She had not moved during the entire attack. She had not needed to. Her guards had protected her perfectly. She adjusted her clothing calmly and looked around the room at the terrified delegates. "My apologies for the disruption," she said in a pleasant voice. "I trust no delegates from other species were harmed?" "Good. Shall we continue discussing the trade agreement?" She sat back down and took a sip of water as if nothing had happened. The room was silent. Every species was staring at the human delegation with expressions of pure shock. Even the mighty Gorvani looked shaken. Their own guards had barely managed to draw their weapons before the fight was over. Viral Keth slowly climbed out from under her table. Her legs were shaking. Her scales had turned pale with fear. She looked at the human guards and saw them resume their positions behind Ambassador Chen. They stood at relaxed attention again. They looked almost bored again. The lie was back in place. They looked harmless. But now everyone had seen the truth behind the lie. The Krethvar ambassador approached Ambassador Chen with visible hesitation. "That was impressive. Your guards are very skilled." Ambassador Chen smiled politely. "Thank you. We do try to recruit the best. I notice they still carry no weapons. They do not need them." The Krethvar nodded slowly and backed away. He looked like he wanted to be anywhere else in the galaxy. Medical teams arrived to deal with the wounded and remove the bodies. Station security swarmed the room, asking questions and taking statements. Through it all, the human delegation remained calm and cooperative. Viral Keth found herself standing near Sergeant Morrison. The human guard was helping a Mintheran delegate who had been knocked down during the chaos. Her hands were gentle as she helped the small creature to its feet, the same hands that had killed 4 beings in less than half a minute. "Are you injured?" Morrison asked the Mintheran in a soft voice. "No," the Mintheran stammered. "I am fine. Thank you." Morrison nodded and returned to her position. She noticed Viral Keth watching her and met her eyes. There was no hostility in her gaze, no threat, just calm acknowledgement. "Ambassador Viral Keth, Morrison said politely. I hope you are unharmed. Virelketh swallowed hard. I am well, thank you. I have never seen anything like that. Morrison shrugged slightly. It was such a casual gesture. Such a human gesture. We train for situations like this. I am glad no delegates were hurt. How do you do it? Virelketh asked before she could stop herself. How can you? What you did. Morrison was quiet for a moment. Her expression softened slightly. We are what our world made us, Ambassador. We did not choose to be this way. We simply survived. She paused. But we can choose what we do with what we are. We choose to protect. She returned to her position, and Virelketh was left standing alone in the aftermath of violence. The delegates were still staring. The whispers were already spreading. Everyone had seen what humans could do. Everyone now understood why the Galactic Concordat had classified them as they had. Everyone knew why they arrived unarmed. Weapons would only have made it worse. That night, Virelketh lay in her quarters and stared at the ceiling. She kept replaying the fight in her mind. 30 seconds. 4 humans. 15 attackers. And it had not even been close. She thought about what would happen if humanity ever decided to go to war. If they ever decided to stop protecting and start conquering. If they ever turned those terrible abilities against the galaxy instead of against its enemies. The thought was terrifying. But then she remembered Morrison's words. They choose to protect. And she remembered Dr. Thesson's explanation. They want to belong. Maybe that was the most important thing of all. Humanity was the most dangerous species in the galaxy. But they had chosen to be friends instead of conquerors. They had chosen to guard instead of destroy. At least for now. Virelketh hoped that would never change. 2 days passed after the attack. The summit continued, but everything had changed. The delegates moved differently now. They spoke differently. They looked at the human delegation with new eyes. Fear was everywhere. Virelketh could smell it on every species she passed. But there was something else mixed with the fear. Something she had not expected. Respect. The Gorvani delegation had formally thanked the humans for protecting them from the Zalith attack. The massive creatures had bowed their heads to beings half their size. The Krethvar had offered a warrior's tribute. A gesture they reserved for the mightiest fighters. Even the Ulithians, who usually avoided physical species entirely, had expressed their gratitude. Humanity had saved lives that day. They had done it without weapons, without hesitation, and without asking for anything in return. The galaxy was starting to understand something important. Humans were dangerous, but they were dangerous in the way that a guard beast was dangerous. Deadly to enemies, gentle to friends. Virelketh found herself on the observation deck late one evening. She needed quiet. She needed time to think. Her understanding of the galaxy had been completely changed in the span of a few days, and she was still trying to process everything. The observation deck was a curved room with massive windows that looked out at the stars. It was usually busy, filled with delegates admiring the view. But at this hour, it was nearly empty. Nearly. Sergeant Morrison stood at one of the windows. She was alone, holding a small cup of something dark and steaming. Her uniform was neat and her posture was relaxed. She looked peaceful. Virelketh hesitated at the entrance. Part of her wanted to leave. She had learned enough about humans. She was not sure she wanted to learn more, but curiosity drove her forward. It was the same curiosity that had led her to investigate in the first place. She could not resist it. "May I join you?" she asked. Morrison turned and nodded. "Of course, Ambassador. The view is beautiful tonight." Virelketh moved to stand beside her. The stars stretched endlessly before them. It was indeed beautiful. Peaceful. Hard to believe that violence and death existed in such a beautiful universe. "What are you drinking?" Virelketh asked. "Coffee," Morrison said. "It is a human beverage. Would you like to try some?" Virelketh remembered what Dr. Thesson had said about caffeine, a substance that caused cardiac failure in many species. Humans drank it every morning. "No, thank you. I do not believe my biology would handle it well." Morrison smiled slightly. "You are probably right. It takes some getting used to even for us." They stood in silence for a moment. Virelketh gathered her courage. "You know I have been investigating your species," she said. "I have learned many things about humanity. About your homeworld. About your capabilities. About what you can do." Morrison did not seem surprised. "I know. Word travels fast, as they say. Many delegates become curious after they see us work. Does that bother you? Being studied like some kind of dangerous animal? Morrison considered the question. Sometimes, but I understand why it happens. We are strange to most species. We do not look dangerous. We do not have claws or fangs or shells. We look weak and soft, and then something happens, and everyone sees what we really are. She took a sip of her coffee. It must be confusing, terrifying, Viral Keth corrected. It is terrifying. You moved so fast during the attack. You killed so efficiently. And then you just stopped. Like it was nothing. Like violence is something you can turn on and off. Morrison was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was softer. Earth made us, Ambassador. Our world is not like other worlds. Everything there wants to kill you. The animals, the plants, the weather. Even the ground beneath your feet can open up and swallow you. And we had no natural defenses. No armor. No venom. No claws. Just our bodies and our minds. She turned to look at Viral Keth directly. Her eyes were forward-facing. Predator's eyes. But there was no threat in them now. So we became something else. We became the thing that everything else learned to fear. The thing that does not stop, does not tire, does not forget. We did not evolve to be prey. Ambassador. We evolved to be the most dangerous thing on our planet. And eventually, we were. But you are not on your planet anymore, Viral Keth said. You are here, among species that are not your enemies. Why do you still carry that violence inside you? Morrison smiled sadly. Because we cannot remove it. It is part of what we are, those instincts, those abilities. They do not go away just because the danger has changed. She held up her free hand and looked at it. These hands can heal or hurt. They can build or destroy. Every human carries both possibilities inside them. Then how do you control it? How do you stop yourselves from becoming conquerors? This was the question that had haunted Viral Keth since she first learned the truth about humanity. A species this dangerous should have taken over the galaxy by force. They had the capability. They had the drive to survive. Why had they not done it? Morrison lowered her hand. Her expression grew thoughtful. We spent a long time being afraid of everything, she said slowly. When you are small and soft on a world full of predators, fear keeps you alive. Then we spent a long time making everything afraid of us. We became the apex predators. We conquered our planet. We killed anything that threatened us. She paused and looked back at the stars. But somewhere along the way, we realized something important. Fear and violence can help you survive. But they cannot make you happy. They cannot give you meaning. They cannot fill the emptiness that comes from being alone. I do not understand, Viral Keth said. We are pack bonders, Ambassador. We need connection. We need family, friends, community. We need others to care about and others who care about us. This is as fundamental to humans as eating or breathing. Morrison's voice grew warmer. When we reached the stars, we were not looking for more things to kill. We were looking for more things to love. She turned to face Viral Keth fully. You asked how we stop ourselves from becoming conquerors. The answer is simple. We do not want to conquer. We want to belong. We want friends. We want to protect the things we care about and be protected in return. She smiled. We are very good at violence, Ambassador, but we are even better at loyalty. And we would much rather adopt you than fight you. Viral Keth felt something shift in her understanding. The fear was still there. It would probably always be there. But now it was balanced by something else. Hope. And if someone threatens your friends? She asked. What happens then? Morrison's smile did not waver. But something changed behind her eyes. Something cold and ancient, and utterly without mercy. Then they learn why humans arrive unarmed, she said softly. Weapons would just slow us down. The words hung in the air between them. Viral Keth understood their meaning perfectly. The galaxy is lucky, she said finally, that humanity chose friendship. Yes, Morrison agreed. We are all lucky, because the alternative. She did not finish the sentence. She did not need to. They stood together in silence, watching the stars. Somewhere out there, countless species lived their lives without knowing the truth about humanity. They saw the soft skin and the lack of claws and assumed weakness. They did not understand what those simple-looking creatures really were, but Viral Keth understood now. Humans were the descendants of survival itself. They were the children of a world that tried to kill them every day and failed. They carried violence in their bones and compassion in their hearts. They were the most dangerous species in the galaxy, and they desperately wanted to be friends. As she returned to her quarters that night, Virelketh found herself thinking about the future. In a few cycles, her report on humanity would be read by the leaders of the Sithani hegemony. They would learn the same truths she had learned. They would feel the same fear. She would tell them the same thing Morrison had told her. Accept the friendship, treasure it. Because humans protected what they loved, with a fury that nothing in the galaxy could match, and the alternative did not bear thinking about. The classified files on humanity were updated the following year. A new notation was added at the very end, one that would become famous throughout the Concordat. Humanity is not dangerous because they carry weapons. Humanity is dangerous because they are weapons. They are weapons that desperately want to be your friend. They are weapons that will protect you with their lives if you let them. The wise species accepts this friendship. The foolish species does not remain a species for long. This is the most dangerous secret in the galaxy, and now it is not a secret at all. Ambassador Virelketh served for many more cycles. She worked closely with human delegations throughout her career. She attended their celebrations, learned their customs, and formed bonds that would last the rest of her life. And sometimes, late at night, she would remember a conversation on an observation deck with a guard named Morrison. She would remember the stars. She would remember the truth about humanity. They were dangerous. They were deadly. They were born from violence and shaped by survival. And they were the best friends the galaxy had ever known.